Thank you all for coming this evening. Go ahead and call the roll, Debbie.
Trustee Guyer.
Here.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Bauman.
Here.
Trustee Youngerman.
Here.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
Trustee Brzoska.
Here. And we're all here this evening. Thank you. Moving along in the agenda, under public participation, the first three items, A, B, and C, we are going to punt to a future meeting, but would like to move to item D, which is FY 2024 audit presentation by Lauterbach and Amon. Welcome.
Good evening.
Evening.
I am Jennifer Martinson with Lauterbach and Amon, here to present the audit results for the fiscal year ended April 30th, 2024. Feel very loud. I don't know how you guys feel.
No, it's good.
Okay, great. I do want to start by thanking Jennifer and Lexi and the team out here for all of their hard work during the audit process. It really is a coordinated effort for us to get through this together, so we appreciate all the hard work that goes into preparing through the process and year-round, really, for us. So thank you. As the board knows, an audit is required to be completed by an independent auditor per state statute each fiscal cycle. And really the goal of the audit is for us as your auditors to be able to provide an opinion on the financial statements presented this evening. So we have done that. We have issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean audit opinion. That is the highest opinion that we can issue, and it really just means that the financial statements are materially correct or do in fact accurately represent the financial position of the village. So really most important piece of information in this really large document here, right, is that clean audit opinion. Since I know there is a lot of information there, I do want to break down this report a little bit and point out some highlights for all of you. So there's three major sections here. In that first, in your introductory section, there's two pieces of information I want to point out. Your transmittal letter, which starts on page 3, and this is a non-financial introduction to the audit report and to the village as a whole. So some really cool information there on the village of Montgomery in general. And then additionally on page 14 is your Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting that was awarded again to the village for the fiscal year ended April 30th, 2023. And I do believe it was 20 years. 21 for the 21st year that it's been received by the village. So it's a very prestigious award that speaks highly to the transparency of these financial statements. So congratulations to the village on that. And we will also be submitting this year's report and do anticipate the village will receive that award again. So again, congratulations. Your financial section will have what we call the MD&A, or Management's Discussion and Analysis, which starts on page 23. This is really the executive summary to the audit report. So it's just a handful of pages, and I know this thing is over 200 pages, so that section really will summarize all of it nicely for you. It's going to point out the key highlights for the year, some major changes from the prior year to the current year. So really, if you read just that section, that handful of pages, you'll have a really full, comprehensive understanding of the audit results and the financials for the village for fiscal year 2024. Just to briefly touch on highlights, overall, the governmental funds did see an increase of $1.5 million in fund balances for the year, with ending fund balance of approximately $27.8 million, of which about $5.6 million is in your general or your operating fund for the year. I did also want to point out your budgetary comparison schedules would start on page 107 and continue in more detail on 115 if you wanted to review, again, in detail that comparison from actuals to budget for revenues and expenditures towards the back of the report there. And then finally, the last section is your statistical section, which starts on page 179. So this is a really great piece of the audit report. It's going to have 10 years of trend information all in one place. So 10 years of trend information on property taxes, major revenues, expenditures, fund balances. So really cool to kind of see all of that information all in one place there. We do also have that smaller report that you should have received, the management letter. And so this is really our way to just communicate if we had anything that came up throughout the process that we felt was important. There were no new recommendations this year, just some updates to prior year recommendations. So you will see throughout there that there was just a change in the funds over budget comment, as well as some upcoming GASB, or Governmental Accounting Standards Board statements that we have to comply with. And we'll work closely with Jennifer and the team as those become required to be implemented. And then finally, I'd be required to communicate if we had any difficulties during the audit, disagreements with management, or anything of that nature, and I'm happy to say that we did not. So overall, we have that clean audit opinion, the certificate of achievement for your excellence in financial reporting again, and huge thanks to village staff as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have this evening.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions? All right, thanks for
Okay.
coming.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank
great to see all of you. Thank you.
All right, moving on, item E is the public hearing for the 2024 tax levy that we will be taking action on later. So I will open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the board on the tax levy? Did anybody submit any written comment that you're aware of? Okay. All right, I'll close the hearing on the tax levy and move into the item F, which is the public hearing for the Marquee Point Annexation Agreement Amendment. Open the public hearing. Is there anybody that wishes to address the board on that public hearing? Okay, hearing none, I'll close that public hearing. And the last item is public comment. This is a 2-minute opportunity for any member of the board to address, or any member of the public to address the board on any topic. Any takers? All right. Hearing none, move on to the consent agenda. I'll read the items and entertain a motion for approval. We have minutes of the November 25th Village Board meeting, accounts payable summary report through December 9th, the water production report for November of '24, the 2025 meeting schedule, ordinance 2102, providing for the abatement of our 2017 bonds. F is ordinance 2003, providing for the abatement of our 2021 bonds. G is ordinance 2004, that is abating the levy for the 2023 bonds. And H, ordinance 2105, is for the 2024 A bonds. And the last item for consent, I, is ordinance 2106, providing for the abatement of our 2024 B series bonds.
Before anybody makes a motion, I spoke with Director Maluski. If you could just touch briefly on items E through I, just for transparency and for the public's sake of all of this bond
Sure.
information there. Thank you.
So the property taxes are being abated for our general obligation. So typically, when we issue any general obligation bonds, those are backed by property taxes. And by abating those taxes, then we are essentially saying that we will pay those bond payments in that upcoming year from the designated revenue source that we've identified. So that can vary from the user fees to municipal utility tax, anything identified in those various bonds as the designated revenue source for them. So this removes them off of the property taxes and ensures that we're using those designated revenue sources to make those future obligation payments.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for
So
approval?
moved. Second.
Moved by Brazaska, second by Youngerman. Go ahead, call the roll.
Trustee Brazaska.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes. That carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, moving into items for separate action. The first three we'll discuss together, I believe. Ordinance 2098, annexing property at 29 Baseline Road. Ordinance 2099, rezoning that property. And ordinance 2100, granting special uses and related variations for that same property. These are all second reading. You guys discussed them at the last meeting.
Yes, so no real updates on this. You have 3 different ordinances before you. This will annex a zone and approve the special uses and variances that are necessary for PTR Trucking in order to obtain their building permits and do the expansion project that they have planned. And they are here to answer any questions, should you have any.
Perfect. Any questions?
Motion to approve ordinance 2098?
Second.
Motion and second by Bauman. Go ahead and call the roll.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzezska?
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Item B, ordinance 2099.
So moved.
Second?
Go ahead.
Trustee Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzezska?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
And Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
Carries 6-0. And item C, ordinance 2100.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzezska?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
That carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, and those are approved. Yeah, no problem. All right, so the next items we have are D, E, and F. They will discuss them together and then take individual action. We have recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission of PZC 2024-014. This is Sunway Carriers. And then item E is ordinance 2107, granting the variations for that project. And F is 2108, granting the final PUD plan approval for that project. Director Apt?
Yes, so this is Lot 5 in the Montgomery Business Center, Unit 3. So this is immediately adjacent to the former Home Depot building on Nell Road. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of their request for variations related to screening of the outdoor storage area. Given that they back up to the railroad tracks, the existing tree lines and wetlands, they asked for some variances for the requirements for the outdoor screening. They will be meeting the requirements where the areas are visible from the street, so along the front of the building and a little bit wrapped around the side, providing the berming, et cetera, that is required. So they did ask for that relief. They got a positive recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. In addition to that, they are also requesting for their final PUD plan approval, which is basically like a final site plan approval. So you have both of those ordinances before you tonight. Since the second meeting of the month is canceled due to the Christmas holiday, we are asking for waiver of first reading for those ordinances for the final PUD and the variations.
So moved.
And that's for item D, the recommendation from Planning and Zoning Commission.
Trustee
Go
Youngerman?
Yes.
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzezska?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
That carries 6-0. Item E, ordinance 2107, granting variations.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Brzezska?
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzezska?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
And finally, item F, ordinance 2108.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzezska?
Yes.
Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
Yes.
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Yes.
That carries, thank you. All right. Moving on to item G, H, and I, we'll discuss together, and we'll take individual. Oh, sorry, G and H, sorry. I just figured we would just do them all. G and H, sorry, recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the PZC 2024-016, special uses and variations for RL carriers at 2100 Rochester, and ordinance 2109, granting special uses and related variations for that same project.
Yes, so R&L Carriers owns the former Yellow Freight property. They have also purchased the properties to the east and to the west. They are planning an expansion of the building to accommodate their operations for truck terminal, as well as a new maintenance building that would be for the, pardon me, for the maintenance and vehicle inspections for their fleet, as well as a truck wash. So they're requesting a special use for that maintenance building operations as well. As expansion of their outdoor storage and operations of the truck terminal. Because we're dealing with some existing conditions, they are requesting some leniency as far as the exact requirements for outdoor storage screening. So there's a few variances related to that. They are doing their best to meet the intent of the code and screen what they can from the road and meet those requirements. The Planning and Zoning Commission held the public hearing last week and did recommend approval. The ordinance before you approves the special uses as well as those variances. And they are again requesting waiver of first reading so they can keep on track since we do not have a second meeting this month due to the holiday. and they are here also to answer any questions that you have.
I do have questions. I gotta find them. Okay, let's see. So with the truck wash and the fueling center, all of that, these are folks, would you come down, please? Thank you. So, excuse me, so that whole area that's going to be maintaining and, excuse me, I don't know what just happened here. Is it strictly for your fleet? You're not going to have outside trucks coming in?
Can you
Okay.
come over to the microphone, please?
Thank you. And then the other piece is the operation 24/7 is listed in here. Could you please talk about
We do
that?
operate around the clock, but there are certain times when it's busier than others. So the mornings, over the first few hours, we'll actually be moving a lot of equipment out, moving out the freight, and then it'll be pretty much dead quiet. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty quiet in there until they all come back in the evening. And then we have maintenance that happens in the evening, but then that's regulated to just that maintenance building. So everything will be inside that. So they're making the trucks ready for the morning.
So I guess my main concern, and I was out there today kind of looking around, I don't see a lot of residential that's close to that. I would not want to have trucks idling for long periods of time. That could be disruptive, it gets annoying.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that was my main concern. And when you're saying that they're getting everything ready earlier in the morning, so roughly how early are we talking the operations would
So-
be starting?
So the way it kind of works is, if you don't mind, I'll answer a little bit larger question. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so the way the operation works, we have freight that comes in, and the first place they go is to the maintenance building. They do a safety check. We run through all the points, make sure everything's okay on the trailers and the tractors. If there's something that needs to be repaired, or we got to change a light bulb, tire, oil, that sort of thing, that's what happens at night typically.
Okay.
You don't get the major repairs. It's just to make sure the tractor can go back out in the morning. So they come through the safety lane, that's what we call it, the inspection lane. And then they take the trailer to the dock door. We unload the freight, moves pretty quickly, get them ready to go out that afternoon, or the next morning, whatever it is. So, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of idling. We don't like
Okay.
idling.
Yeah.
It just wastes fuel. So,
Right.
we don't like that at all either.
I think what the question was, is what time does that start? I
So-
think there's a concern, my concern is the spotter trucks and things that are moving around.
Sure.
As they're backing up and they're beeping, because there's residential there, and I think residents are concerned about that
Understood. So,
background noise.
so the majority of that is going to happen, I'd say from the 7 to 11 range, 7 to 10. If we're sending people out later than that, it's really not ideal. And then when they all come back in the afternoon, and it's spread out, so we don't have 30 trucks lined up to come in all at once. Their routes are individual. They come back at different times, but it's usually a three-hour window-ish. And so it's not just a constant running. It really does quiet down in the evening. We do have 24-hour operations, but not specifically in the logistics. So it's operations trying to get things ready for the drivers when they come in the morning.
So would that fall underneath those spotter trucks? And I apologize, trustee Spurling. Would that fall under like the spotter, getting the trailer ready? Is he backing, someone spotting a trailer and bringing it in, and they're loading it at 3 in the morning, so that when the guy comes in at 7, he can go?
Not nearly as much. It'll be very quiet in the evenings compared to what, normal business hours is when we have the majority of the moving around of the trailers.
Okay, yeah, my concern is that like 4 in the morning stuff.
Right. Now, I think the only adjacent residential we have will have a berm and will be screened, so that will help, and it's further away. So the operations is one lot over.
Okay.
And then the maintenance and everything is then again screened by our building, the cross dock itself.
Okay.
So it's really kind of a beneficial means when it just the way it worked out, which is great.
And
Right.
predominantly what's happening on the expansion off to the east that's adjacent to the residential, it's just parking.
Just parking.
Like, it's storage of your equipment that's being
And they
used
don't,
for your
and they don't
operations.
stay there either.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, we'll park this one for a month. It's
Sure.
not that kind of thing. It's, if you think about how a mailroom works, it's, okay, we'll put that bag there for a second, and then once the delivery guy comes in or mail person comes in, they can grab that bag and go. That's all it is. So it's not, we won't store trailers to sit
Sure.
idly by.
And
a
even
long
if you
time.
do, you're storing your own equipment,
Yes.
not
That's correct.
third-party stuff.
It's all for us. That's
Yep.
correct.
I have one more. And then in terms of the fleet, so what is the anticipated number of the truck tractors and then the trailers?
So as far as the, how many doors do we have on that? So 150, we're probably thinking right around 60 drivers, something along that line. The trailers, of course, would be more than that.
Right.
And what is a little bit of an insider view into some of the logistics is that the cross dock is the most important part. Having some trailers, additional trailers, and staging those correctly is just as important. So that's where that comes in. So we wouldn't have one driver for each door, for instance. It's a percentage, and that's an approximate there. It'd be close to that 80 for the drivers, for the tractors.
For the tractors would be 60 to 80?
Mhm.
Okay. And then for the trailers, because those would potentially would be stored overnight? Because
Yes.
they're getting prepared?
Yes,
The day
if they're not
before.
ones that leave for a longer haul, yeah. So an approximate, that's a real difficult thing for me to say
Sure.
because it depends on operations. If business is really good,
Right.
there's going to be more trailers. But it will only be what's the most efficient. So what I mean by that is we're not going to bring from other terminals and just have them placed here just to sit and, get
Right.
rot on the tires. They're going to be used, but only so I couldn't tell you exactly how many trailers, but it would make sense that we'd have just as many for the doors that we have.
Okay.
So
But again,
if
you're
there's 100
anticipating it's not going to be long-term storage
Oh, no.
for trailers
No.
because you need to keep moving?
If that's the case, we're not doing our job.
Right. Okay. I'm done. Thank you.
So they're essentially stored as part of your workflow, your cycle.
That's
So
it.
they need to be rotating,
That's it.
otherwise you're not making money.
And it's in our cross-dock operation, if there's freight that sits there more than 12 hours, we're not doing our job. So we don't warehouse anything, it's just moving and off to the client.
So if I may, I have a couple of residential concerns. One, they had an issue with illumination a while back. Do you remember that? So I just want to, when they do finally approve the photometric plan, that's addressed?
Yep, so the photometric plan's under review, they've gotten our comments, and so they're working on making their amendments so that it meets the code.
Thank you. And the other issue was, there was flooding going on in that area. I want to make sure that was addressed.
Well, I'll let Pete address that a little bit more, but we did complete the stormwater project in that area, and I'm not sure about the connection, but Pete can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so you might recall when Transline came in for permit, there was a fairly large crowd here to discuss drainage. The concern was some standing water in the detention basin. And if you recall, the original design was a zero-release basin, which met the county ordinance. We had also proposed a outfall storm sewer that would run through the county residences, the county properties to the east. But because it wasn't in the village, we really didn't have the authority to get easements, and we relied on the township and the county that was they were unable to get us the easements that we wanted. However, there's still a release for the basin. It's the tile system that's in place and has been in place for a long time. So one of the things, once we knew we couldn't get a formal outfall for that property, we went to kind of a plan B, which was to put a smaller diameter outfall that ties into the storm sewer system or the tile system that exists and the township maintains. We had been working on that with the county to get the easements. We finally got the easements, and then that was installed last year. So that's in place, and that will alleviate the standing water that might accumulate over time. Like if you had several storms in a row, you might have that. So that's operated by the Public Works Department. It's valved off, so it doesn't have to be used. And it would rely on the infiltration, but if there's standing water, that valve can be opened, and then it'll drain out that standing water. So I believe that that was the primary concern of the residents that were here. So that's been addressed, and there were no residents in attendance at the meeting. We thought there might be, but there weren't. So I think the drainage issue that was originally brought up at Transline was resolved, and they were providing additional detention to compensate for any additional impervious they've added. But I think that outfall storm sewer has resolved the problem that we did have. So.
Thank you for that.
Director Rapp, were those residents notified that there was now going to be some movement on this property?
Yes, so they were all within the 250 notification radius, so they all received notifications.
Okay, good.
I have a question for most likely Engineer Wallers. Last several projects we've had involve these terminal type of businesses, which are wonderful, non-rooftop. That's the type of activity we like. What impact and what is the plan for our infrastructure over in that area? The number of trucks we're having coming and going now, the roadways, what's the plan for upkeep, modification, road replacement as need be, and who's
So-
going to be responsible for that?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of the special use process is that you could require additional things that are specific to that industry that comes in. So when Yellow Freight came in, we identified that there were concerns with the condition of Rochester and its structural ability to be able to handle that level of trucking. So as part of that project, one of the special use requirements was that they would pay for the upgrade of Rochester Drive to make it have a structural number that was compatible with what we would put into the new industrial areas that we're building today. So that kind of compensated for that street. And then they also contributed to the cost of the traffic signal at Rochester. So we felt like that was a good resolution to their impact on the street. From then on, once that structural number is achieved, maintenance of those streets goes back to the village's infrastructure system, where we resurface, all of the industrial streets in the village once they're built. So there's no ongoing fee from any of our industrial, folks in the village. But it's, getting it up to the initial structural number was the important part, and then it'll just fall back to our normal infrastructure program.
Would we believe that would come at a quicker pace than some of our other road resurfacing projects due to the weight and the traffic? And I've been through some of these industrial areas closer to O'Hare where you're dodging, you're taking your wheels into your own hands trying to navigate some of these areas. So do we anticipate doing this on a more frequent pattern than the rest of the village?
We don't. And the reason for that is that the structural number means that there'll be additional thickness of asphalt, additional thickness of base to withstand that traffic. So our residential streets are set up for a certain structural number. Our industrial properties have a different structural number, which is higher asphalt or base, depending on the actual design. So we wouldn't expect them to age any faster, and, they haven't proved to so far. Now, that's not to say we don't have some of the industrial properties that were installed, 1970 and earlier, that maybe didn't come to the standard that we use today. And so hence is the reason why we upgraded Rochester when we had the opportunity.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Any other questions?
No. Motion to approve?
Second?
All right, that's item G, the recommendation of Planning and Zoning Commission.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Brazaska.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer. Trustee Spurling. Yes. Trustee Bauman. Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
That carries 6-0. Thank you. And secondly, H, 2109, granting special use and related variations.
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Brazaska.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item I tonight is ordinance 2110, authorizing the execution of a third annexation agreement amendment for the Marquee Point subdivision. This is waiver of first, passage on the second reading. Director Rapp?
Yes, as you may recall, back in the summertime, we approved an amendment to the annexation agreement for where Marquee Point subdivision is located, and we extended it to January 1st of 2024 with the kind of moving target with their closing date for D.R. Horton with Hart's Homes. They are not going to be able to close before the end of the year, so they are requesting an amendment to carry this over until May 1st. So they should be able to have their closing taken care of by then, and we'll have a new development agreement in place for that subdivision and development by D.R. Horton within that time frame. So we had the public hearing as required by state statute at the beginning of the meeting, and now we can adopt the ordinance that would officially extend the annexation agreement, specifically related to Marquee Point until May 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Trustee Youngerman. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Brazaska.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, next item for separate action is ordinance 2101 for the levy and assessment of taxes for fiscal year beginning May 1st of 2025 and ending April 30th of 2026. This is the second reading. Director Maluski.
Thank you, President Brawley. So tonight we have the presentation of the levy based on our prior conversation. We are presenting a total levy of $2,924,932. So that can be further broken down into the general levy request as well as the SSA levies. So general levy request is $2,531,300, which consists only of new construction. And then we have SSAs totaling $393,632. And just as a reminder, that general levy request does fund the operations of our public safety and public works and administrative services. So tonight is the second reading. We do require passage tonight in order to file our levy with both counties by the due date of December 31st. So that's the last Tuesday in December. So I'm happy to answer any questions should the board have any.
I do. I looked at all the information, a lot of the information that you all discussed at the last meeting, and I think all of us would agree we did an exceptional job over the last decade of freezing the taxes and only capturing new growth. Over that lifespan, we've only seen the cost to run government go up almost exponentially. There's a few key things that I would reference. The cost to purchase a squad car, which I would say we average 5 or so a year, has gone up drastically. And this year, notably, is our police pension obligation has gone up. I believe 10 years ago it was in the 400,000s. We're up over $1.1 million this next year. So understanding that we have done an exceptional job of watching the budgeted funds, I would like to see us levy the full 3.4% extension. which is an increase in the levy of $86,000 or $10 per house per year. And I know people have gone on record certain ways, but I feel like I have been talking about this for the last 5 years, is we're very over-reliant on the sales tax that we all pay. And we need to be cognizant about shifting some of that into a different fund, because if one of our sales tax generators, let's say, is $2 million a year, and they pull up shop because there's somebody doing a better job in Yorkville with a similar operation, we're cutting staff at that point. This 86,000 is certainly not going to bridge that gap, but it's going to move us in the right direction. That's my recommendation.
I've been on the record multiple times, I will not support a tax increase, only new and SSA. I said at the last meeting, I think that we need to let our staff know that, you know, I'm looking at our agenda, and Trustee Bauman said earlier, yes, we're getting truck terminals and things, which are better than rooftops, but it's not as good as what our neighboring communities are getting. So I'm going to task staff with getting us better development. That way we can begin to take the tax burden off the residential sector. Things are still expensive. The cost of food and everything is still high. The reason that we're able to do this for 10 years is because our staff does an outstanding job. But it's gonna come down to, as we go forward, I'm gonna start asking, is this a want or a need? And I'm gonna start picking things apart, and I'm gonna be saving $10,000 here and $10,000 there, especially if this tax increase, if we levy the 3.4%, we damn well better be able to get our money's worth out of it. And I'm going to nickel and dime everybody to make sure that we do.
I can agree with a couple of items. President Brawley, yes, this board has done a tremendous job at holding the levy as long as it has. It's been coupled with growth that has been occurring. But as Trustee Youngerman said, the projects that have come the last several years haven't been anything really that substantial to, I think, allow us not to levy. You mentioned the cost of police cars, pension obligations. We had, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 3 officers leave 2 other districts due to higher salaries, Chief? Yes. You know, so we have to prepare to be able to retain our police officers. That's number one, public safety. We need to be able to do that. If due to developments outside of our community, we lose shoppers in Montgomery, that's gonna reduce our sales tax. We can't, I think we have to be proactive and not reactive to that. I think this staff has done a wonderful job of shopping around. Mark you have a purchasing, I forget what you call it, but when you shop for trucks and plows, what's the name of that organization you go through to?
We utilize multiple different purchasing cooperatives.
Yeah, through the co-op. So I don't think our staff is wasting money. I think you're gonna find it harder and harder to nickel and dime $5,000 and $10,000 here and there. The last 10 years, I think you've asked the staff to find that money over and over again, and there's a point to where they're not gonna be able to find it anymore. And we have to be in a position to at least capture some money this year. Not saying you have to levy year after year after year. You can levy this year, capture that money, and that's gonna be a cumulative effect on that money that you're capturing. So you can allow yourselves to go another 4 or 5, 6 years without levying. So I will be in support of it, but I do agree why you won't vote, but I think it's necessary for us to approve that levy.
I understand where you're coming from, but I also know that in a recent truck purchase, we went through what, 2 or 3 price increases
Correct.
that we shouldn't have had to go through?
But that wasn't Mark's
But
fault.
that's
That
not
wasn't the
unique to the
village's fault.
village.
That was the economy. That was post-COVID. That had nothing
No,
to
that-
do
that's-
with this
that's
village
just
and the
called-
staff.
That's called theft. If we have a contract for a vehicle and
Okay.
that's called theft.
But that's
We did
not
have
the
an option
village
to
being
not buy it.
wasteful. That's not the village being wasteful with taxpayers' money. That's just being a victim of the world's circumstance. Everybody was dealing with it. And we have to place ourselves into a position where we're not impacted negatively because of that. Again, we have to be proactive. And passing this levy will allow us to be proactive for the next decade, just as you've been for the previous decade.
Being proactive is going out and getting industrial and manufacturing and retail and commercial. That's being proactive. Being proactive is going out and annexing additional land, especially when we know that 47 is about to be widened. Being proactive is going out and renegotiating boundary agreements which have expired, which, quite honestly, the village got taken advantage of 20 years ago when they were negotiated. That's being proactive. Being proactive is not continuing to push the tax burden on the residential sector. People can't afford it right now.
But again, this village has not annually burdened the taxpayer. Yes, there are taxing bodies that have, and that needs to be addressed. I was part of that in trying to cut those budgets year after year after year. This village has not been that burden. And at $10 a household, I think it's responsible to do that, to put ourselves in that positive position. Coupled with that aggressive action that you're requiring. Go over the boundaries. Talk about more annexation. Be more aggressive on the types of developments that are coming in. I think those two have to work hand in hand, and I think we need to do that in tandem.
Well,
I don't think we can rely on one or the other.
Yeah, and a couple things. I just want to comment, because I agree with both of you on some of this. Just my tax bill, I'm paying $5 less to the village than I did 10 years ago, which is a testament to all the work we've done here. Also, a testament to the work that we've done here. We created an entire position in Village Hall focused on economic development for the first time in-house since any of us have been involved here. And what we've seen, the fruits of that, and even going back before Patrick was here, is the annexation of the Caterpillar property, the SSA that went with that, the investment in that community, or in that development. So we're seeing wheels turning on things, right? We get updates on various economic development fronts. Just because Costco isn't coming to town doesn't mean that we're not holding our own against others. You know, we have Sam's Club, right? And that was a huge win for the village. All we're talking about today is for $10 a year, I will gladly pay that to be assured that, like Dan said earlier, when he calls 911, there's an officer on duty that can come to my house.
Can I just chime in on something that Jennifer mentioned, Director Maluski, sorry, at our last meeting, is that the state of Illinois is going to suspend sales tax on groceries. The village is going to take a $2 million hit, January 1st, 2026, for the year. We have no say in that. The state's just taking it. They're just giving it back. It's great for the residents. It's great for all of us that go shopping. We rebate over 15%, almost 18% of your property tax bill with the property tax rebate program. This is like $10 out of that. We increased it from 50 to 75. This is $10. You know, in listening to everybody back and forth and everything, and Trustee Bauman, you had very valid points and very strong history with some of the taxing bodies. So I'm in agreement that I think we have to move forward with passing the levy. I mean, again, we haven't historically done that. We have a lot of nice things, but with that $2 million hit a year from now, you know, that's going to be a problem for us. So I'm in support of levying the full.
I think our residents are used to the services that we're giving them, which are excellent. A tribute to staff. And I think they want to continue that service, and I'd hate to see anybody lose that service. So I think we're in a position now to actually, let's make sure that we don't have to cut any services in the near future. So for that reason, I'm ahead of this.
Yeah, I've talked about this quite a bit the last board meeting. I'll just touch on a few things. So, 1.1 million in levy that we have not levied. 900,000 in rebates that we've given. So 2 million over the last 10 years we've given back to the taxpayers, or not levied to the taxpayers. If the $10 is a problem for people, they do have the tax rebate, where they'll get more than their $10. We increased that a few years ago. It was, what, 45? And
Yes.
now it's 75. So, we did increase that. I mean, that's one of the options we have in the future too, is if we have to decrease that, I mean, we can to capture some funds. President Brawley had mentioned, cutting staff. That means reducing services. I mean, if we cut staff, we're reducing services. And like Trustee Brazaska said, I think that the residents are very happy with the services they're getting. I know I am. I remember years back, even, just 7 years ago when I retired, we didn't have the number of police officers that we have. We didn't have the number of public works people we have. I mean, this last cycle with leaf pickup, before, Public Works would struggle to get through the village one pass in a week. And now with the additional employees and the equipment that, we saw some increases on, they would go by my house 3 times a week sometimes during leaf pickup. So I don't want to go back to the days of where the residents aren't getting adequate services, and especially the services that they've come to rely on and appreciate. And I don't want to be in a position, because what's going to happen is if we do get in this position, and I appreciate what Trustee Youngerman said too, unfortunately, we can't make people come to town. We can give them incentives, and we can try to entice them to come into town, but the last development, Costco, they made their decision based on location. And we can't give them a location we don't have, right? So, and I don't want to be in a position, because if we do have to reduce staff and cut staff, we're going to make that list. So everybody will have to sit here and think long and hard of what positions do you want to cut, and what services do you want to cut to the residents over, $10 a year. And I'm not saying that this is going to solve all of our problems, but as I said at the last meeting, we can levy it now, and if some miracle happens where all of a sudden we get this influx of money, we can reduce that levy next year. Nothing says that we have to, levy the same amount every year. We can reduce that levy. So I'm in agreement. I think we should capture what we can this year. I don't like to raise taxes. It's never a good time to raise taxes. But the facts is, yes, everything's going up. It's going up for the residents, but it's also going up for the village, the cost to do business. So I don't have a problem with the full levy this year, and we can take a look at it again next year to see if we can just maintain it or reduce it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
So I think those are all really valid comments, valid reasons to do the full levy. As I said last time, I'm not in favor of it. And I think that there's still, people are struggling, and I know everyone's saying, well, it's only $10. But it's also the other taxing bodies are still putting their levies through. So it may be only $10 on our piece of the bill, but they're still getting hit with the other taxing bodies, which we have no control over, and that's fine. But I'm thinking about my neighbor. He just lost his job. He worked 35 years for the same place. He's in his 50s. He doesn't know where he's going to go and get a job. He's just trying to figure out how can he keep his house. So, yeah, he's watching every dollar. And I can't support it this year. I can't say that, in the future or next year or the year after, but I'm not going to support it this year because I think people are struggling and this would just be, a little more added on to what's getting levied out there.
And as I'm sure you have, and it's not going to make or break him in that one instance, but make sure he applies for the rebate as well.
Absolutely, I will.
So,
Yeah.
okay. I do need to thank all of you for the conversation around this, the pleasant, discussion, whether we agree or disagree. I appreciate all of you.
Can I just ask one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to clarify, am I wrong in the last 5 years that we annexed into Caterpillar property, the Hammond property, and the Shearing property? Were all annexed into town?
Shearing was already annexed.
Shearing was,
They've been in town for 20 years.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it was just the two, Hammond and.
Wasn't there,
Cat-
over by Caterpillar, there was nothing else that needed to be annexed for?
We annexed a small parcel there at the end of Light Road to add to the Ravago development, but that was really the only other annexation in that area.
Both of those combined are pushing 1,000 acres of increased land in Montgomery? That's what I'm thinking. So,
Thank you to staff for that.
yes. All right, so there appears to be consent for the total tax levy of 2024 of 2.61276 million?
2.614276 is what I, okay,
Sure.
yes.
Yes, that's what I was trying to read, but you know how it goes. I ensure that you will get the table updated before we sign and file.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, with that, item J, entertain a motion for approval.
So moved?
Second?
Trustee Marisak?
Yes.
Trustee Brzoska? Trustee Guyer?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling?
No?
Trustee Bauman?
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman?
Absolutely not.
And I'll vote yes, so that will carry 5-2. Thank you. All right, thank you all, appreciate it. The last three items, K, L, and M, we are going to table to a future meeting.
Can I ask a quick question about that on item K? We're going to have enough time to file? I see there's some time
Yes.
restrictions on this, so, because we're not going to be at our next meeting, so that's going to push into January. So we're still going to have time to file and capture these funds?
I'd spoken with the state's attorney's office, and they said yes, that we would still have time. But, I mean, if we want to, I can present the item. It's up to you.
Do we just, I mean, can we at least, because I would like to do this sooner than
Sure.
later, because I don't want any surprises, because the letter says 6 months from when the judge signed the order. He signed the order on June 27th of 2024. So that would put us to December 27th of 24, and that's what the order says, so.
Okay. We can discuss it for sure. Jen, are you able to?
Yes.
Are you in
So,
position?
just have to find my packet of information here. So this resolution is related to a settlement that we were notified from the state's attorney's office for the state of Illinois. This is a settlement offer based on some bonds that the village issued back in 2004 related to the development of the Blackberry Creek West subdivision. So those financial institutions, so the bonds mishandled them, and this is their settlement. It's more so of a type of class action with several states. So we were listed because those bonds qualified and were eligible for the settlement. So the $102,000 of our settlement, we're recommending to move into the Blackberry Creek West SSA as a form of offsetting any of those future costs, because this particular fund no longer exists, but those pins and parcels that would have paid into that still do exist, and we have a special service assessment on each of those properties and parcels. So we're hoping that these funds from the settlement will offset any future maintenance for those parcels. So I can take any questions if anyone has any.
And even though this was signed in June, when were we notified about this? That
We were
these funds were available?
just notified, think that Thursday or Friday before Thanksgiving. And if we don't take the settlement, the state will roll it into their general fund.
So the order was signed in June. They didn't let us know until a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
That's why I would
I'm
like
with
to
you.
go ahead and
Yeah.
approve this tonight and
Yeah.
get this going.
Something doesn't smell right.
Yeah, right? So I'd like to
They're-
make a
they're only gonna
motion to
take it-
approve.
$1.9 million from us in sales tax revenue.
Right.
Now we're getting our 102 back.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I'll second that.
Who made the motion? Motion?
I did.
Oh, Guyer.
Second?
Okay. Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Brzoska.
And that carries. And that's item K, the resolution 2024-062, and that carries 6-0.
Question on item L. I've been asking for this to be on the agenda now for about, probably at least 6 months.
Yeah.
We're now into December, and the next meeting is in January. I want to know what meeting this is going to be on.
First meeting in January is the 13th?
This should have been done 5 months ago.
Okay. All right, we had 2 items for discussion that we also need to table this evening. Those will be at, I believe they would be at the January 13th meeting. There's no reason why they wouldn't be. Anything new or unfinished?
I have 2 items.
Go ahead.
Director App or Manager Burke, I'm not sure who would handle this. So I was at the dollar store by Walmart, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and and then I had a resident say something to me, probably, they were there maybe a week and a half later, but I noticed the garbage cans out front were really, it was overflowing with garbage, and then they said it was the same way a week or a week and a half later. I'm guessing they're probably short-staffed, but it's noticeable, and with the weather changing and stuff, they need to be on that. So if you could just reach out and remind them. And then that same resident mentioned, this is for Chief. Hi. Mentioned that there was a car of people just kind of hanging out in the Walmart parking lot. Just parked there. She went into the store, did her grocery shopping, came back out, they were still just sitting there. So I don't know if that's allowed, if that's loitering, what that is, but they were just hanging out. And I don't know, I
For what
said I
it's
would
worth,
mention it,
What was your friend doing?
grocery shopping.
Oh.
She went in, and then they were still there when she came
Got
out.
it.
So,
All right.
yeah. So just mentioning it, I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but,
Well, next time, if you can call, give us a call, you never know. We'll at least roll by and check it out.
okay, thank you.
The
I got-
trash cans are still full. I was there today.
I got
They were
2.
overflowing.
Go ahead, Ben.
Holiday judging Wednesday, coming up this next Wednesday. Appreciate, we had some volunteers from this board that are going to assist. So I just want to shout out to them. And the second thing was kudos to the people who put on our fun event yesterday, our Merry and Bright event. I think attendance might have been down, but I think everybody had a great time.
Yeah,
Great event.
I liked it. It was, warmest in like 10 years, for sure. Yes, to Christina and Rosie.
Yeah.
Public Works, Police,
A
all
lot
the
was
fire
on.
departments. I specifically called out the Montgomery Countryside Fire Department, and then Aurora Township truck pulls by, so, don't tell Rob. All right. It happens, but yes, it was beautiful.
Yep.
Anything else? All right, you can see our future meetings. Since we have canceled our Christmas Eve board meeting and intergovernmental committee, this is our last meeting for the year, so to all of you, I appreciate working with all of you. Take the next few weeks, do not come to a board meeting, don't think about this stuff, and spend some time with your family and enjoy the holidays. And we'll see you on January 13th for a couple of things we gotta talk about.
That's right.
With that, we are not going into executive session, and we'll adjourn. Motion?
So moved.
Second. Moved and second? Go ahead.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Brzoska.
Yes.
Trustee Guyer.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Bauman.
Yes.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.